Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Moving to Markham. I'm Ralph Ciancio, realtor and entrepreneur, and I am so excited about our interview today with an old friend, an old inspiration, an old mentor, you could say, probably one of my first mentors, and you may not even know that, but
I didn't actually. Yeah.
Well, yes, you know what? So this is Mr. John Webster, and it's fantastic. I'm so honored to have you here to have a conversation with us about who you are and a bit about your history. And you play a very important role in the city of Markham. For people that are watching, they may recognize you as Markham's town crier, which is quite an honor. And maybe you can tell everyone a little bit about what is a town crier? What does that entail?
A town crier was the original information device. We didn't have radios and TVs and microphones and so on. The king had wanted to get a message out, and of course nobody could read or write or anything, so he'd tell the town crier. And the town crier would go down into the community, he'd ring the bell or a drum or a horn or whatever. I happen to use a bell. And he'd say, "Oh yay, oh yay, oh yeah." That means, "Come here, listen, I got something important to say." And then he'd say whatever the king told him to say. Unfortunately, it was usually the taxes or the tithe was going to go up, and there was a tendency to stuff the town crier down a well to show the the displeasure with the lord of the manor.
Wow.
And consequently, it was deemed that anything that was done to a town crier was done to the crown. So it was a treasonable offense. You've heard "don't shoot the messenger" was actually very important because it was a hanging offense. Of course,
Well, nobody would want to be the messenger if you know that you're giving the bad news.
Absolutely. You didn't have to worry about a pension plan in those days.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, the interesting thing is that in England, any act or law that has not been overturned by an act of parliament or a higher court is still on the books. And with the British North America Act, all of that came over to Upper and Lower Canada, except Upper Canada kept Lower Canada kept the Napoleonic Code. Wow. But everything that's on the books was brought in when Trudeau patriated the Constitution. It was all brought forward. So I am actually, as an official town crier, a protected individual.
Well, look at
Isn't that marvelous?
That-
I tried to explain that to a York Regional Police officer, and he still gave me the ticket. No sense of history.
Maybe he needs a few lessons. Well, it's exciting to have you here. I guess as a communication piece, as a town crier, it's interesting that, we look back and see, what took place maybe, 100, 200, 300 years ago, or obviously much longer. And then now we are using podcasts, through YouTube and Instagram to push out a message. And it's just so interesting to see how the transition of communication has taken place and, the impact of that. You were the original Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were the original tweet.
Absolutely, yes, yes. And it sort of fits in Markham. Markham has a motto. I don't know if you know the motto of Markham. Most people don't. No. Every community has a coat of arms, and they have the motto on it. It's usually in Latin. Everybody knows it, Carpe Diem or whatever it is, Ours is in English, and nobody knows it.
And what is it?
Leading while remembering. And you give some pause to think on that. Leading into the future while remembering the past, because otherwise you're just going to repeat it. So here we are, leading communications technology with the original
and communication
device. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. And you know what? I'm curious as this conversation kind of evolves to understand a little bit more about the past of Markham and, as a city or as it was a town and your experience therein. But, as we're talking about the past, I can introduce how we first came to connect. And for me I would say if I was writing a book, your name will be in it. As I know it's a good thing. So, I'm not sure if you remember, but when I was 15 years old, I was at high school at Father Michael McGivney in Markham, and I was selected to represent my high school at a leadership conference called HOBY. So Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership. And they selected one delegate from every high school in Ontario. And from there, they had a leadership conference for 3 days where they talked about communication and understanding empathy and, core leadership skills. And it was an awesome 3-day experience. And from that conference, they selected 2 people to represent Canada at a World Leadership Conference for HOBY. And a total surprise to me, I was selected to represent Canada. And I remember coming home to my parents saying, "Hey, I got invited to spend a week in Indianapolis for this World Leadership Conference." And at the time, it was the mid '90s. It was money was tight. It was a great honor, but it was not feasible for our family to send me out. And as one of our fundraising opportunities, I had met with you when you were part of the Optimist Club, I believe. What was your role in the Optimist Club at that time?
At that time, I'm not sure. I was president for a while, but
so my instinct was that you were the president at the time. But I remember 15 years old, waiting, and if I don't know the exact location, I feel like it was underneath the Markham Museum, was where you guys used to meet. It was
That's right.
Downstairs somewhere.
We were meeting in the church that is in the museum grounds, and
And I remember being 15 years old, and I put on my best suit, and I went down there with this 15-minute presentation on why the Optimist Club should, fund this excursion, this trip, and they granted the entire trip. They paid for it, and I think that as I look back in my life and you see the trajectory of where you're heading, and especially in that 15, 16-year-old time period, your life can go in a lot of different directions. And I think that the experience I had representing Canada and really thinking of myself as a leader really changed my trajectory. And I owe that to you. I owe that to the great people in the Optimist Club and other organizations like the Optimist Club that have a merit to support, to protect the community, to fund things that have a greater future. So I definitely I thank you for that. And here we are, many years later. We're actually neighbors. We live around the corner from each other, and it's always great to see you going for a walk and checking out the tulips and things in your yard. So you're an inspiration, Mr. Webster, and I appreciate that.
And it's just John.
Okay, John.
Yeah. Mr. Webster's my dad.
No problem.
Yeah. That makes me feel really good, because you do things and you do them because you want to do them. It's the right thing to do. It's serving. It's being part of the fabric of the community. But then that is done, and you're moving on to the next stage of life and so forth, and you have no idea. I had no idea that was going to affect your life to that extent, and it makes me feel good. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's an inspiring message, because I know that you're a man of service. You're there to serve others. I know that in your fabric. I inspire to be more like that. I consider myself somewhat to be of service, and I strive to be a great man of service eventually. But it's inspiring to think that the small act of kindness you may share with someone, especially when there's no vested interest for yourself personally, it's a pure act of kindness, it could have a huge impact. 1 generation, 2 generations, 3 generations from now, it could have a phenomenal impact. We work with an organization called Welcome the Stranger, which brings in refugees, and we help find shelter for them. The group raises money to fund 1 year's rent for them, so they can live rent free. We furnish the property, and there's a group that will bring people to doctors and set them up with employment opportunities. And it's so inspiring to think one family that comes in, we have a family that just came in from Afghanistan, and you think one family, 6 generations from now, what was that like? Few weekends of car wash that you raised money for rent. How 6 generations from now, that could be the prime minister. 1 generation from now, that could be the prime minister of Canada.
Mm-hmm. It's exponential. Yeah. I used to, and I'm going to go off topic here a little bit, but for quite a while as a town crier, I was involved with the celebration, what do you call it, the citizenship ceremonies. And I would be there as a representative of the Crown, and I'd be there with my uniform on and so on. And there was a citizenship judge, Judge Reiser, and he was an interesting person. And of course, he would do what he had to do. And then there was a little section in the process where he could make a comment, not a whole sermon, just a little bit of time and so on. And he had a habit of asking semi-rhetorical questions, because there was a whole room full of new Canadians there that had just sworn the allegiance. And every once in a while, he'd ask a question and something rather, and he'd say, well, maybe the town crier would like to answer that, And so I had to pay attention, because you never knew what he was going to say, And this one time, he said, now you've all just become Canadian. You're now Canadian citizens. It's marvelous. We're going to sing in a few minutes, we're going to sing our national anthem. And in the national anthem it says, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. How do you stand on guard for Canada? And I thought, I hope that's a rhetorical question. Yeah. He said at that time, we live in a country with the longest undefended border. We don't have barbed wire on the turrets. Some of you may have come from countries like that. We don't have armed guards there. We have some underpaid border security people. How do you stand on guard for Canada? We don't have surveillance. You don't have to show your passport everywhere you go. You don't get carded all the time. With all that, how do you stand on guard for Canada? And I was thinking, oh, don't ask me, I don't know. And thank goodness he continued on. He says, you stand on guard for Canada, becoming part of the fabric. You become part of the fabric of the community. You set down some of the baggage that you might be bringing into the country, and you become a part of the fabric. How do you become a part of the fabric? And I thought, no, don't ask. He went on, thank goodness. He says, you become part of the fabric by becoming part of the community, by volunteering, by doing things for others, by serving, and you become part of that fabric, and that's how you stand on guard for Canada. We have a tradition, we have a way, and it is the Canadian way. People say there's no Canadian way. There is a Canadian way, there's a Canadian culture, and you become part of that culture by volunteering, and you bring the best you can and you take the best you can, and that's how it works. And I'm glad to see that sort of worked for you.
Absolutely.
And we'll work, that's Canada way. You can bring it down. You move to a new neighborhood. You move to Markham. You come to a particular area. And the first thing you need to do, besides introducing yourself to the neighbors, is find out where all the places are and that sort of thing. And then become involved with the community. Yeah. I feel so sad when I see people come in and they buy a nice house, and they press the button, and the garage door goes up, and they drive in, and the door comes down, and they walk through the back and into the house, and then they go out in the morning. And this neighbor has no idea who that neighbor is. And
it's heartbreaking, isn't it?
It is.
I call them ninjas. And sometimes when we're selling a home, every time we sell a home, I'll ask our clients. I say, well, tell us a little bit about the community. Tell us about your neighbors. Family on the side. Who are they? Like, I don't know. I said, but what do you mean? I mean, is it someone tall, someone short? Is it a family? Do they have kids? I don't know. I said, how long have they lived there? They've been here since we moved in. I said, how could you not know the human beings that share a fence line with you? They say the exact same thing. They roll in, they push the garage door opener, they pull in, and they close the door. And I understand some people, that's just their preference, to be more secluded. They want privacy. But I think it does erode the fabric of our community. I think the idea of knowing who your neighbors are and being a great neighbor, to have a great neighbor, you need to be a great neighbor. And, it's always sad. I always said that the demise of our modern community came from the access from the garage door to the house. Because, we sell homes of different ages, and homes in the 70s didn't have, like, if you buy a house in Markham Village and it's built in 1970 and there's a door from the house to the garage, someone put that in the last 10 years. Because when they were originally built, no home had access from the door to the garage. And that forced you to come out of your garage with your groceries and wave to your neighbors. So it made a tighter-knit community. And in newer urban living, where you're in a condo, it's even worse. Because unless you catch somebody in the hallway, you may never know who's around. And it's a sad state of affairs for what I believe is a great fabric of the community, which is togetherness, comfort, trust. Right?
But it is changing. If there was one thing that was good about the pandemic, and you probably haven't heard a lot of people finding anything good about the pandemic, the one thing that was good about the pandemic is that we were all more or less trapped in our houses, in our little cocoons, and then poof, we were allowed to go out, and we did. Okay, and a lot of people in their homes, they bought a dog.
Yeah.
And now that they've got a dog, I try to walk. I try to get about 13 kilometers a day in, and so I'm walking all over the place. And it used to be I would walk along the sidewalk. There wouldn't be a lot of people because most people are driving. And you'd say good morning to them, and they didn't really know how to answer that because you're not supposed to talk to a stranger, and and all that stuff that they unfortunately were taught when they were kids. But now they've got a dog. And when you're walking, you only go the speed as the number of sniffs the dog makes along the way, And so now when I'm walking around, the sidewalks are full of people. And, I will say good morning to them. And the first few times, oh, good morning. and that's all there is. But after saying good morning 3 or 4 times to them, because they tend to be out walking the dog at the same time I happen to be walking out, we're all creatures of habit, and I have no idea who they are, but I'm getting to know them, and they're getting to know me. Now we stop for conversations and so on, and now there is a neighborhood. So, it sounds as though, well, I don't know, Markham is just not the way it used to be, and thank goodness it isn't, but, it's still a community. It's still people, as long as you make the first step, because we've been taught stranger danger, and it isn't danger. It might be. You've got to be careful, but most of the time, it's not stranger danger. It's great to be able to talk to people, and that's what it's all about. I'm sorry. I was vaccinated with a phonograph needle. I will go on forever, so we're off topic
No,
here.
it's great. I love it. I'm listening like, these are amazing stories and great messages inside each story. So talking about stories, I know that, as we were chatting earlier this week, you had mentioned some of the historical changes we've seen. We were in Markham Village and we were talking about, what did it look like when you first moved in? What were some of the changes you've seen in Markham from, when you grew up compared to the Markham you walk your dog in now?
Yeah. Actually, I don't have a dog.
Oh,
I have a wife, but
you're
not
watching,
a dog.
You're watching other people's dogs.
Yeah. What do they say? Life begins at 40 when the kids move out and the dog dies,
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, changes. It has changed dramatically. I don't know if you're really familiar with the streets, but Parkway Avenue, that was the farm lane I drove cows down when I was a kid.
A farm lane, unbelievable.
Farm lane, yeah. And I'm living in the house my grandfather built in the late 20s, and it has changed dramatically from my memory and from when I've been living there. And I say it's good that it's changed. Mm-hmm. It used to be if you wanted a hamburger, you had to get over to Tommy's before it closed. That was it. Hospital, it was really, really super when they finally built North York General, and then Scarborough, but there was no hospital. Now it's just at the end of the street. Markham Stouffville Hospital is there. If you want any kind of food in the world, the whole world has come to Markham and stayed. Yeah. Used to be if you wanted Chinese, there was only one place to go for Chinese food. Now it's all over the place. There's Thai, there's Chinese, there's Mexican, there's absolutely, there's all the chains and all the little mom and pop shops too. That it's just marvelous. So these, I call them old folks. What am I doing calling somebody an old folk? But these old folks that say, well, it's not the way it used to be. Thank goodness it's not the way it used to be. I mean, we can go all around the world without leaving the community. Yeah. It's marvelous.
Yeah, it's definitely, more and more walkable. And that's one thing that I irks me, I would say, because I think there is a movement for support local. And I think that that's an idea that people have. But when we look at their actions, people are shopping at, huge big box stores, which I understand they employ people and have their role in the economy, but it's killing the Main Street livelihood, right? I mean, you can look at any Main Street. We work closely with Main Street Unionville, Main Street Markham, Main Street Stouffville, and a few others. And it's hard to run a successful business because they need the support of the local buyer. And, we love walking along any Main Street, but we're on Main Street Markham. I'm probably there walking 3 times a week for something or another. And I intentionally try to support. And even if it's $1 more or $5 more, or, it's a little less convenient in one regard, I think there's something about keeping the community flourishing, I think is really important.
It's true, but it is nothing new. I can vaguely remember when they built the plaza on Highway 7, Sherwood Plaza. Oh, it's going to kill the Main Street merchants.
So funny.
Unionville is going to be terrible. They'll be out of business. They shouldn't do it. And of course, there were all kinds of people coming to the local council trying to stop it, but it went ahead, and the businesses are still there. And the next thing you know, Woolco was going to come. Woolco was going to be in what turned out to be Markville Shopping Center. Yeah. Oh, it'll kill the Main Street, and it's going to kill the little plazas all the way along and the strip malls, and they're still there. Yeah. They're still there. Oh, they're going to build big box stores in the northern part of Highway 48, which is now Markham Road. Oh, it'll kill everything. It won't. It won't. It will change it. It will change it. It'll adapt. The local hardware store that was on the main street of Markham, he didn't adapt. And he came to retirement age, and he's gone. Right? There is still the hardware store, Home Hardware, and You know, he's been there for, I'm not going to say how long. He's been there for a long time. You know, it's kind of neat. You want something, he's got it. You know, if he hasn't got it, he'll order it in. He's got the home hardware people behind him.
For sure.
And
sure. And the service there is fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I like that way more than playing hide and seek with an orange apron, you know?
Yeah. Well, there's a point for that too. You know, there's a place for that, but it still is small time community, but he has changed. He isn't just the little hardware store. He's part of the organization where if they haven't got it, they'll bring it in, they'll deliver it to you, they'll do all kinds of stuff. You know, Murray's a friendly person that's lived there all his life, and his dad before him. So you know, so it's changed, but it's changed for the better. Used to be when you say, hey, you want to go to the show? It wasn't what's playing, or do you want to go and see such and such? There was one show. It was the Roxy. It was on the main street, you know.
Where was the Roxy?
Oh, the Roxy is. It was in the old
now
the old town
Main?
hall. Yeah.
Oh, in the old town hall.
In the old town hall. That was
the
the
Harry
Roxy.
James building.
Harry
now?
James. Yeah. That was the Roxy. A lot of my misspent youth was in there, and but you went and saw whatever was playing, you know, because that was it. Okay, now, my gosh, there's theaters all over the place. Of course, there's theaters right in your living room, too, with Netflix and all the rest of it. But Markham is such a vibrant community, and it is expanding, and people are saying, well, you know, it's getting too big. Well, you know, every time it gets bigger, it means more people are here, and more people are here means that there are more things that we can do. You know, there's community centers. You know, Markham has, at the time it was built, it was the only community center with a rehearsal hall in it.
Really?
You know, community centers tend to be, well, we've got a population, an extra 5,000 people, so we'll put an ice pad here, and, you know, we'll put a cricket center there, you know, all that kind of stuff. There's a rehearsal hall in there, and there's rooms where they can practice, little practice rooms attached to it, and it's right across from the library. It's attached to the hospital too. So they can share the heating and the medical library with the Markham Library. Anyway, I'm babbling on here. The nice thing about that is that the new houses, you know this, the new urbanism, very small.
Yeah.
And if you get a kid who decides he's going to play the trombone, the neighbors on either side know he's playing the trombone. You know.
Interesting. And that's a Cornell Community Center.
The Cornell Community Center. And this is built so that he can go down there, he can join the Markham Concert Band or anything else. He can play. He has an outlet for it. I like to think that someday, 50, 60 years from now, somebody will be sitting with an interviewer like yourself, and maybe it'll be you, and you'll say, and how did you get started in the, you know, and he'll say, well, I lived in a community that had a community center, and there was a rehearsal hall in it, you know, and now I'm a famous whatever he is, you know, and I think that's great. We've got a wonderful future here. When I'm going to get the date wrong, but when the first man walked on the moon, my grandfather was sitting in the living room. We're all in the living room. We were watching the TV, you know, and there was kind of a pause, and in a slow way he says, you know, I'd like to live another 20 years. And I thought, him living another 20 years. And he went on to say, you know, I've gone from walking behind a horse with a number 2 Flurry plow to plow the fields to a man walking on the moon. And that's just in my lifetime. Yeah. And he says the bulk of that change has been in the last 20 years. I'm excited to see what's going to be in the next 20.
Yeah.
You know, and as a kid, I thought, well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, you know,
Isn't that unbelievable?
I was a whippersnapper at that point, and 20 years was a long time, you know. It's now changed. It's,
where do you see the next 20 years?
The next 20 years is way over the horizon. It's the next 5 years, the next 2 years. Yeah. We've got stuff on our cell phone now that hadn't even been thought of a year ago, or if it had been. Look at AI. I mean, it's been around, I guess, for a long time, but nobody knew anything about it. And now, my gosh, it's writing letters for us, it's doing all kinds of other things. Yeah. It's exciting. These are the best times to be alive, because next year is going to be so much different than last year. And the nice thing about, from my point of view, is that I'm living in Markham. Yeah. And Markham, you know, we've called ourselves the high-tech capital. I don't know whether it's the high-tech capital of Canada. I think it's the high-tech capital of the world. I'll say that anyway. A high-tech capital. And so all the advantages, all the advances that are happening are going to happen right, I don't want to say within walking distance of me, but
Right here,
we're part of the triangle of Toronto and Waterloo and Markham. It's great, and it is evolving. At one time, we had IBM, we had Honeywell, we had a lot of big companies and a lot of executives and head offices and so on, and that meant that there was a lot of little companies around it that were supporting that and so on. But that has changed, and now it's becoming the high-tech biocapital because we have a teaching hospital. Yeah. So all those little nano things that they're inserting into you that are going to do robotic things throughout to keep us alive longer, that technology is happening here in Markham, which is great. And it's even better because now they're constructing, they're building the new
university.
The university,
York
York University is right here. So it's changed. It used to say Markham's a great place to live and play. It's a great place to live, learn, work, and play. Do you notice the learn part is in there now? And there's no other place you really want to be. Okay, I'm biased. I'm third generation. But, if somebody said, well, I think we're going to move to Upper Rubber Boot in Saskatchewan, I'd say,
Upper Rubber Boot.
I don't think so.
Yeah. And you know what? I was born in Scarborough, grew up in Markham, and I've seen so many changes that have taken place. Obviously, just a fraction of what you've seen through your time here in Markham, and I see it progressing. I see some challenges. I see things that frustrate people, but I think that we focus a little too much on those things and then miss out on all the great things that exist.
Yeah.
Right. An example would be if you want to play soccer. I'm 42 years old. If I want to play soccer, I've got so many options of where you can play in a men's league in soccer. Just we call it a beer league or just a house league. There's so many different options. I can pick a night and there'll be a league, there'll be a team, right? And that's just a super quick cross section of how much opportunities there is here.
And there's the other side of that opportunity. You're talking about soccer. Yeah, there's soccer, baseball, hockey. We have some fantastic hockey teams here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Junior A. But there's also the other end too. We've got a museum for those that are into that sort of stuff. We've got Bill Crothers School, which is athletics. Yeah. We've got, and what is the other school, which is the arts? It's at Unionville is the arts attached to the theater, which is a 600-seat theater, 600, 300, a big one anyway. Yeah. Yet small enough to be a community theater. For sure. Whether you happen to be leaning towards physical things or intellectual things or artistic things, or if you happen to be, you're not supposed to say disadvantaged anymore, but if you have difficulties in learning and keeping with other people, there are all those facilities around too. It's
support.
Whatever you need, the support is right there.
And it's interesting you brought up the education side of it, because one of the biggest catalysts I found in when someone's deciding where to live, the first thing that I found through 17 years in selling real estate is people are going to move. I'm talking about somebody moving from further away. They're going to move near their family or friends, so where they have already a fabric that they can join, right? Mm-hmm. And then from there, the second one would be job, right? And then the third one would be education. A future. Where's the best future? And most people view the best future as the best education for their children. So, I think that's why Markham has always had, a high demand to live in Markham. Prices have always remained quite high and have excelled higher than some national averages by a lot, primarily because we have some of the best schools in the province by EQAO standards anyways. But, we talk about best school in terms of athletics, in terms of arts, in terms of high tech, in terms of IB programs. So there's something for everyone. It's like a buffet of education. It's a buffet of entertainment. It's a buffet of shopping, right? So there's definitely opportunity, and also a buffet of employment, right? So there's a lot of draws to move to Markham. I know everyone has their own reason, but I think transportation and commuting becomes a big deal as well. So expansion with Go Train service and 407 and hopefully they clean up YRT systems to get more people on there.
Yeah, you're right. Traffic is a problem. The only problem with traffic is the car in front of me. If we could get that guy off the road.
The guy behind you said the same thing.
Yeah, well, that's his problem. The car in front. But that has changed. I got to admit, to come to the studio here, I thought, okay, what time no, I'm not going to drive. And I hopped onto the GO train. Here I am.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Great.
it is really slick. And of course, they got the Presto card now, so that you just tap it and you get on, and you get on the TTC. The connections are there. It will be getting better. I remember when we all celebrated that we were going to get transit service in Markham, and they bought four buses that ran every hour along Highway 7, and that was it. And now, you know, I can walk out of my house. I'm 5 minutes, and there you are. It's fantastic. You mentioned the schooling, how important that was. My grandfather had two kids, my mother and uncle, of course, and he decided that he didn't want his kids at the West Hill School because it was a one-room school and the older kids taught the younger kids and so on. And he looked around. Markham was founded by the Mennonites, not specifically, but you know, there were a lot there, and they felt that education was important to the point where Markham had not only the equivalent of an elementary school, a high school, and a finishing school. And so he gathered up everybody and he sold his market garden and came up to Markham, and that's how we ended up in Markham, because of the schooling. It's important.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what, that was true. You know, I guess you're talking about 100, 200 years ago. When was Markham founded? Do you know?
Oh, yeah. I'm probably going to get the date wrong because it has an age thing.
1827?
No. It was 18, might have been 20. No,
I'm just guessing.
1800s.
I'm just guessing because our office is on Main Street, Unionville, and I see the signage. I don't know when that was, historic Main Street Unionville or historic Main Street Markham. You know, we have these plaques everywhere. But
I'm never good on the dates, but we celebrated our 200th anniversary a while ago. In fact, I think we celebrated the 225th, so it's been quite a while.
So it must be about 1800.
Yeah,
more or less.
But you know, you think that that's really marvelous, and then you go over to England and they've got dates on things that are only 3 digits. You know, but
well, you know what I mean. It is what it is for Canadians. Canadian history, it's quite shallow relative to the rest of the world. But I see that as a great opportunity because now you're making your mark on the future of Canada, and when Canada is 1,000 years old, who knows? The impact of our day-to-day living, how it will impact people 500 years from now. It's crazy to think. But.
Oh, it's very important, and we're becoming more concerned about that too, with the global warming and how we're using fossil fuels and so on. Yeah. People are quite often coming to me and saying, "Oh, they're plowing up all the farmland, and it's terrible." And yes, it is. But I honestly believe that we will make a change. We are growing things. I hate to use the word hothouse. They don't call it that anymore. But they're able to get more produce per acre than they were before. It would be nice if we didn't have to plow up some of the fields, but most of the people in Markham would not be living in Markham. It's usually somebody else's field that they're talking about.
Not in my backyard, right?
Not in my backyard.
But if you go back to your story of being on Parkway, which was built in the 70s, right? Ramona, like those streets were built in 1968 to 72, more or less. If that was a cow patch, I mean, that was someone's urban sprawl as well.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm sure there were people saying, why would we be doing that? And now we look at that as the old part of Markham, And so I guess it's, it's this constant battle of building efficiently and preserving nature, preserving, the ecosystem that we live in. But
and we're doing a better job of building. It used to be you had to have huge lots and a huge backyard because you had to have some place for the septic tank.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, that now isn't happening. The septic tanks aren't there, and as a matter of fact, with infill, there are now 2 buildings where there was once 1. Yes. And how does that affect the place? Well, first off, the possibility of getting to know your neighbor better. Also, the possibility of people are able to walk to the main street or to the corner store. So it's helping the local economy. It used to be because you were so far away that if you wanted to go shopping, you got in the car and you went someplace. Yeah. But now people are walking. People are taking transit, and the urbanization isn't necessarily bad as long as it's done properly. And I say thank you to the municipal governments that we have had in the past and currently, because they are really following the leading while remembering. They're trying to lead. They're really trying to have environmentally friendly homes. They're making sure that the trees are planted. The mayor has a program of planting, I've forgotten, 10,000 trees a year or something. It doesn't matter what the number is. It's a whole forest of trees that he's planting every year. And even that, you take a picture of a farmland, and yes, it's got a crop on it, but that's it, okay? You feel badly when you take an aerial picture of that and all you see are houses. Take that same aerial picture, maybe in 10 years, you will not see the houses because there's a tree on the front of every lawn, and it is breathing. That's the lungs of the earth. Yeah. That subdivision is breathing.
Yeah, it's a great argument, actually.
Probably as much or maybe more than when it was agricultural. Now, I know it's not a fair comparison because the agriculture is creating food and yada, 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 and so on, but it's not as bad as it appears. And now we're putting the high rises in. Used to be there weren't any high rises. Part of that was because of Buttonville Airport, and that's gone. But the high rises mean that people can live with a higher density, and when they're living with a higher density, it means that we can afford to have all-day GO train system running every 15 minutes at some point.
There's economies of scale with densification for sure.
Absolutely, and that brings people to live here. And if there are people living here, that means the jobs will be here, which means we don't have to go all the way into Toronto. We can have our own economy right here in Markham. I know I said earlier I'm biased. I think Markham is a great place to live because no matter what you want to do, you can do it here. Yeah.
Great. Any other, I know we've been having a great conversation. I want to make sure that I don't miss any points that you want to bring up or anything that's on your mind. I'm just looking through, I prepared a few questions, but I think you basically went through all of them so eloquently. Anything else that you want to add, John, in terms of, role as a town crier, your future for Markham, your experience living here? Was there any notable characters you've met along the way? As a town crier, I'm sure you've...
town crier, yes.
Sure you met a few.
I introduced Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip when they came to Toronto. This is a while back. Prince Philip came up, had a conversation with me, shook my hand.
Wow.
Such a traumatic experience. I don't think he washed his hands since.
I think that's the day he met you, right?
Yes. That was the peak. It was all downhill after that. I've had the opportunity of doing a lot of different things. When I was over in Germany, in Bavaria, we were planting a tree on behalf of the citizens of Markham. There is a Markham Street, Strasse Markham, over there, because the Birdsey settlers came from that particular area, Norlingen. And I was just about to go up and read the cry that I'd prepared, and on my cell phone, it gave me the information that Queen Elizabeth had passed away. You end with God Save the Queen. And so, so I quickly changed it and scratched it out. And so when I came to the part of, instead of the Queen, I said the King, and there was a little rumbling in the audience. And I suddenly realized that quite possibly a lot of those people did not know that the Queen had passed away. And, the town crier was the information device that would say, with the ascension, is immediate, the king is dead, God save the king, that here I was, the town crier, bringing the news that the crown had passed without problems from one person to another person. And also because of the royal family is connected with a lot of people in Bavaria, the family tree, quite possibly I was doing the traditional function of the town crier to some of the cousins that didn't know, and
that's incredible.
That and a couple of bucks will buy a coffee at some places, but it really caught in my throat when I suddenly realized what it was that I was doing there. So that was was pretty important.
It's amazing when you start this journey. Where you'll end up and some of the things that you'll do.
Some of the things you're going to do. Yeah. But I'm a small puddle I'm a small frog in a big puddle. There's some pretty amazing people. Don Cousins was the member of parliament for the area and then became the mayor for a long time, did a lot. Tony Roman before him, each with their own style. And of course our current mayor, Frank Scarpetti, is doing a super job of trying the leading while remembering, and moving it forward. we moved from being a village. We were a police village originally, and then a village, and then Robarts changed it, so we were the town of Markham, which brought into the township, and now became the city. And you know, we're moving forward.
We're moving forward. That's the key. And,
Yeah.
Talking about you know, things that you do, acts of service, moving forward. I know that you're involved with the Lions Club.
Yes,
And
yes.
maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. I mean,
Lions Club is an interesting club. It's as all service clubs are. I chose the Lions Club, or the Lions Club chose me. I'm not sure which happened. My uncle had been a charter member. He was there since it started. We celebrated our 80th year or 75th year. Or it's been going a long time anyway. And its motto is "We Serve." And they serve in all kinds of different things. Environmental, we look after a bunch of parks. We look after the school system, where they go in for testing the children for audio problems. We raise funds for cancer and all kinds of stuff. But you know what the best part about it is? We have a lot of fun. Yeah, we have a dinner meeting once a month, and then a casual meeting, and you know, for those that like to get into all the organization of it, they've got a directors meeting and a board of directors and all the hierarchy, and of course we're part of Lions International, so it's a whole worldwide thing. But for those that are really into the running of the club, there's all kinds of things they can do, and for those that want to come and be part of the social, there's all kinds of things, you know. But the whole thing, it turns out that we're serving the community. We managed to get a whole bunch of birdhouses, and I've forgotten where we got the birdhouses. Somebody knew somebody got the birdhouses, and we went up to Swan Lake, and with the Swan Lake organization, you know, there's that Swan,
of course,
the lake around there, and they're trying to revitalize that and putting the birdhouses in. You're in real estate; they are all filled.
That's it. Talk about a shortage of housing.
They're raising families. Yeah. They're
Funny.
not filled with people. They're filled with birds, and of course the birds help with the ecology, and
sure.
You know, it's and that's all part of the Lions Club, because a bunch of us say, yeah, we want to be part of the fabric.
Oh, that's amazing.
Great thing.
Well, if there's anything we can do to support your vision in the Lions Club and any initiatives you guys are creating, I mean, we want to serve the servers. So
serve the server. Oh, thank you. Lions Club, I'm biased again. I think the Lions Club is great, but I'm going to go back to Judge Reiser. You know, just become part of the fabric.
You got it.
Just say hello to somebody who's walking the dog, maybe 2 or 3 times before they say hello back.
Yeah.
But that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And on that note, I think we can head towards wrapping it up. John, I appreciate your time here today. It was great, and I hope that our listeners and viewers appreciate the insight that you shared. And of course, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me directly, and I can filter those questions and set them up with Mr. Webster. But just as we're wrapping up, any final words or any thoughts you'd like to share?
Just a quick thing that I don't know who you are, but you will recognize me if you're at one of the many festivals, the multicultural festivals or the specific festivals. I'll be in a 3-cornered hat with a bell and a red suit.
You can't miss him.
I'll be saying, oh, yay, come up and say hi.
Yeah. He's very friendly and definitely a celebrity in town. So, that being said, Mr. Webster, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was wonderful having you here. I hope that the viewers and listeners at home found some value in your stories and your insights, and, a peek into the future of where Markham is heading. And so everyone at home, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for another episode of Moving to Markham. Now, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. We'll see you soon.